All right, welcome back, guys. We're going to continue with our material regarding integumentary system. So, where we left off, we were talking about the skin and as far as the layers that skin has. We mentioned how there are three layers. There's the epidermis, the dermis, the hypodermis. I tend to think of the skin almost like a slice of pie, right? You have toppings like whipped cream sometimes, the filling, and then the crust. This whole slide here is kind of just emphasizing just how impressive the skin is and just how dense and complex the skin can be. 1 square centimeter, which is about this distance, is going to be roughly, this is all estimates, of course, anywhere from 3 million cells, about 10 hairs, a yard of blood vessel, 4 yards of nerves, 700 sweat glands, 200 nerve endings, and 3,000 sensory cells. So there's so much happening in your skin. And remember, it covers you from head to toe. So it's all one large organ, but it has a lot of different functions that it plays with, as we've been learning. Okay, so today we're going to spend more time talking about those individual layers that I just mentioned, as far as the epidermis, the dermis, and the hypodermis. So let's start with the epidermis. The epidermis is considered the top layer of skin. It's what you physically see when you look at skin, right? But the thing is, there are actually two layers of the epidermis. The very top layer that you can touch is the stratum corneum. Interestingly enough, that very top layer is all dead skin. Now, the purpose of that dead skin is very important. It helps to protect you. It is slightly acidic. Now, it's like an acidity of closer to like 6.2 pH, so it's not acidic enough to harm you, but it's acidic enough to help kill bacteria and germs. And the big thing that we need to know is that every hour of the day, we lose roughly 30,000 to 40,000 skin cells. So you're shedding skin constantly. You're just consistently removing skin, removing skin, removing skin. Now, cells are obviously microscopic. If cells were larger, like the size of dandruff, for instance, you would see it like mountains of skin around you. But we don't necessarily see skin. However, if you haven't cleaned up in a while, right? Like you have items in your house that have been idle for a very long time. And then finally, you're like, oh, I need to clean up. It's getting a little too dirty in here. And you wipe a wet rag over something like a bookshelf and you see all that dust. Dust is going to be mostly you. Dust is mostly dead skin cells that have accumulated, millions of dead skin cells. And now it's finally something you can physically see. So that's a little eerie, right? But dust is not just you. Dust is also your pets and also your family members, like your brothers, your sisters, your parents. So your dust is a accumulation of all these skin cells that are finally something that you can physically see. So keep that in mind next time you're vacuuming and you see a dust bunny. What else do we observe? Well, if we're losing so many skin cells a day, right, hundreds of thousands of skin cells, we would run out of skin. That's the theoretical idea. So we need to have a layer that is going to help create new skin. And that is going to be the stratum germinativum. Stratum germinativum. What I use to remember this, because I know the words can sound a little crazy with a lot more Latin, is I think of the alphabet. C comes before G. So I think, okay, well, stratum corneum is on top of the stratum germinativum. That works fine for me. That bottom layer, the germinativum, is going to undergo consistent cell division or mitosis, nonstop mitosis, so that it can replace all those cells that you're shedding. So that makes sense. All right. Next, we have the dermis. The dermis is definitely where the big players are found regarding skin. It's called the true skin. It's a nickname that we call it, right? And it's also where we have majority of our structures. It's like the filling of a pie. So first of all, just make sure that you understand that the skin, the dermis, is going to be connective tissue. Everything under the epidermis is connective. Remember, the epidermis is epithelial, whereas everything under the epidermis is connective tissue. What else do we find in the dermis? We also find elastic fibers like that erector pili. We don't need to worry too much about that. It just holds these structures in place. Nerve endings, like for your sense of touch. Muscles, that's going to be typically closer to the hypodermis. Hair follicles, we can talk a little bit about. So anytime you cut your hair, like you're shaving, for instance, the idea is that you're cutting the hair down to the closest level that it's as close to your epidermis as possible. But if you notice, there's still a lot of hair left in the dermis. And at the very bottom, you have what's like a little bud, like a little seed. That's what's continuously growing more hair. There are procedures that you can do, like laser hair removal, to get rid of hair, but it's not permanent. Laser hair removal, first of all, any procedure has a risk. There can be negative side effects, but laser hair removal typically lasts anywhere from 3, 4, 5, 6 years as far as how long the hair will be gone. Eventually, the hair will regrow. So that is something to keep in mind. What else do we have in the dermis? We also have oil and sweat glands, which we're about to talk about on the next slide. So let's get to that slide. All right. As far as the dermis, there's a lot to it, so I kind of expanded it into 2 slides. First of all these sensory cells provide you with important information that's relative to touch. So heat, cold, pain, pressure, that's all touch related. Now, the blood vessels help to regulate body temperature. That's stuff that we're going to learn in cardiovascular system, but we can talk a little bit about it today. It's called vasodilation and vasoconstriction. Vasodilation is when the blood vessels expand in order to release heat. There's so much heat internally. Your body is so hot that you need to expand the blood vessels in order to release it. That's when your skin looks like a reddish color when you're outside and it's like 30, 45 minutes. That's not sunburn. Sunburn is not so fast. But when it's a reddish color and you've been outside for like 30-ish minutes or so, yeah, that's vasodilation. Vasoconstriction is when the vessels shrink and constrict. The point of that is to retain heat, keep heat in your chest. Why do we want to keep heat in our chest? Your heart and lungs, vital organs. If those tissue get too cold, you will die. So it's a big reason why when you're in really cold temperatures, and even if you've got a lot of layers on, your fingers and your toes are the parts of your body that are going to get more numb first, because your body basically says, we can sacrifice that first to keep your chest warm. Sebaceous glands. First of all, I would just make sure you know that the word sebaceous means oil. So sebaceous means oil, right? It's just a fancy name for that. A lot of us are familiar with sebaceous glands for the wrong reasons. A lot of us are familiar with sebaceous glands because of acne. That said, the oils that are secreted are important for a number of different functions. Lubrication. So it's not lubrication that you touch your skin and it feels wet or sticky. It's lubrication so that the friction that is generated when your skin rubs up against itself is not too much. Can you still generate friction? Of course. We've all done that hand rubbing process, right? You can feel the heat on your palms, but it's just minor level lubrication. Protection. The oil that is secreted from the skin can help to destroy bacteria and germs and make it harder for them to harm us. So that's good. And finally, the oil that's secreted does create a slight waterproof ability for your skin. Now, that waterproof ability is very difficult to test because, as you know, it's not so simple as, well, I just took a shower, I walk out of the shower, and now all the water molecules just fall off me because I'm waterproof. It doesn't work like that, right? If you take a bath and you place your hand right over the water just before it touches, if you can really look at it, and sometimes you need high power cameras to see this, you'll actually see the surface tension of the water touch your hand and plop right back. That's what the waterproof ability is, what we're talking about here. Some other animals like ducks, they have their own oil they make and it coats their feathers and it allows the ducks to swim and float on water. Sweat glands, that's more common sense, right? Sweat glands is all about cooling the body off, making sure that you can lower your body temperature, but sweat technically could protect your body as far as immune purposes in a not so direct way. When you're sweating, obviously these fluids are exiting your body, a lot of it at once, right? It's coming down your face, it's coming down your neck, your chest, your back, your arms, your legs, etc. As those fluids are traveling, well, guess what? They're going to carry anything in their path, bacteria and germs. So that can be pretty helpful. Collagen and elastin. We definitely need to know more about those. So I'm going to go ahead and define those for us. If you take any sort of skincare routine, you likely have collagen in your skincare routine. Collagen is a protein, first of all, that is essential for repair. So it's a protein that is essential for repairing skin tissue. At a young age, people have a lot of collagen. It's what makes it so that you look youthful and you're appropriate for your age. As you get older, though, into your 30s and 40s, your collagen levels start to dip drastically, and that's when wrinkling can occur and you start to look a lot older. I always tell people, especially for my guys, because I get it that sometimes guys don't think they need to do this stuff. But when you're in your 20s, it's a great idea to start having a skincare routine, applying stuff daily or even every other day, just so that your skin can look nice and youthful. When you're older, you'll appreciate that. So that's all collagen. What about elastin? Elastin is also going to be a protein, right? But its purpose is kind of in the name. Elastin is going to be more involved with elasticity. So elastin, its job is elasticity, just like a rubber band, right? You can pull a rubber band and you can tell how elastic it is. But just like a rubber band, if you pull a rubber band too much, it snaps. The skin is only so elastic. There's a video that I'm going to embed in the about section for this video. We're about to talk about it in the next slide. It's all about scars. When you have a traumatic injury, the skin can heal, but you're usually left with some sort of reminder of that level of injury that you had. Sometimes scar tissue, or pseudo scars as I call them, are not so traumatic. That type of damaged skin can also occur via stretch marks. When you grow your body, be it width-wise or height-wise, so fast that your body can't keep up. So that happens too. Last but not least, what do we find in the dermis? Immune cells. We're going to learn more about this when we do blood and cardiovascular type content, but the immune cells that are found in the dermis, these are major components of the immune system. They're white blood cells. Basically, I think of them like first responders. When you have an infection and a wound, so the skin has been punctured and you can see blood, these cells are there to attack immediately. Are they perfect? Far from it, because we know that you can get a cut and get it infected pretty easily. So they do their job. They do their best to try to make sure that nothing gets too dangerous for you, but there are limitations. There are restrictions to all of that. Go ahead and erase all this. Okay. Next. This is the video that I said I was going to link. It's just another TED Ed video. I love these TED Ed videos. In my opinion, I think they do an amazing job of going over content that we're talking about and showing a great visual aid as well. This one's all about scar tissue, so you can watch that on your time. Almost done. Subcutaneous, aka the hypodermis. I just tend to call it hypodermis. Please, please, please remember that anything below the epidermis is considered connective. So the hypodermis is also connective tissue. What else do we find in that connective tissue or in the hypodermis? Roughly half your body fat. So we find quite a bit of concentration of body fat here too. Remember, we call that adipose tissue. Now, the main purpose of the hypodermis is to connect the skin or the integumentary system to the muscle. Mission accomplished. But because there's fat here, we're also able to do some other stuff. It helps to insulate, which insulation is all about maintaining body temperature. So in this case, it can keep your body warm when it's really cold. Granted, there's limits to that, but better than nothing. And it also acts like a shock absorber. I'm not talking about electricity like lightning and thunder. I'm talking about impact. If you've ever ridden a bike like a BMX and there's these little tubes near the wheels, those tubes are shock absorbers, so that when you're doing these crazy tricks and you land your bike, the bike absorbs a lot of the shock, so your body doesn't take it and hurts you. If you've never ridden a BMX before, it's fine because you've driven in a car before, I assume, right? When you're in a car, cars have a ton of shock absorbance in them so that when you're driving, everything is smooth and not really rigid because of the wheel or because of the tires touching the ground. Last but not least, here's a great picture showing you what a subsection of skin can look like, especially the lower half of skin. This is using a microscope, 64 times magnification, common sense stuff. You first off can see this big red thing. That's something that's been stained to better see on a microscope. That's the hair follicle. Everything under that, these little cells, that's all fat cells, or adipose, as we call it. Something unique about fat cells is that they do not multiply after puberty. So once puberty has occurred, you will have all the fat cells you will have for the rest of your life. Now, you might be wondering, does that mean I never gain or lose weight? No, you definitely can. It's just the fat cells grow in size or shrink in size, just depending on how much fat there is. So that's a really interesting phenomenon as far as how those cells work. A little bit of anatomy. The fat cells are large cells, very little cytoplasm. 15% of the cell is cytoplasm. 85% of the cell is going to be fat or lipids. So literally what I talked about back in my macromolecules videos is that the fat is just a perfect freezer. You throw stuff in there and it lasts for a very long time, and it can provide you with energy in the long haul. That's the intention, or what we observe, right? So guys, I think that's a great place for us to stop. Pretty good pacing. We're getting pretty close to finishing as well. So not bad. I think we're doing pretty good. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.